welcome everybody to the Australian Water Association's Young Water Professionals Professional Development webinar on dealing with disaster. We picked this topic as we're heading into the corona crisis, as it sort of could be framed. Just thinking, you know, we've dealt with so much going wrong lately. Let's harp on about some of the positives we've had from recent disasters. So really hoping to follow the AWA's aims of sharing information and knowledge, connecting members with industry and stakeholders, and inspiring positive change by reviewing the bushfire of the last year and the year before, and the current response to coronavirus. Okay, now for those who are in, feel free to use the chat just for general observations, but if you've got a question for the panelists, chuck it in the Q&A section. If you've played this game before, you know how it all works, but if you've not, it's sort of like a Reddit situation where you can upvote questions that match something that you want to know about. And I think we're going to have a poll come up. So that's at the very end, and you'll have a minute, I think, to get your response to the poll in, and we really do appreciate your feedback on that poll. Okay, so we're just going to run through an acknowledgement of country. I'll do some speaker introductions before each presentation, trying to keep them short and snappy for the presenters. We want to try and get us all done by 7 o'clock with plenty of time for questions. And a big thanks to our sponsor at Oricon. Okay, so I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I'm situated on. I'm in Lara. It's the Wadawurrung of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. A little bit of research just about where I am, a couple kilometres from here. There's a rock formation that they believe was used as an astronomical observation centre to sort of mark out the equinox and such. And it's so similar to Stonehenge, but it's about 3 times as old, 11,000 years. So it's called the Wordy Yoang. I think I've got it in my notes here. Yeah, Wordy Yoang. Okay, the speakers tonight, Rachael Brownstein from East Gippsland Water, Wayne Charlton from Melbourne Water. They'll both be talking about bushfire responses, and Damian Wells from Coliban Water and Rod Curtis from Western Water will be talking about response to COVID-19. Okay, so I'll just do a quick intro for Rachael. She's the Treatment and Environment Systems Officer for East Gippsland Water. She's responsible for East Gippsland Water's drinking water quality risk management system and environmental management system, and her background in environmental science and natural resource management. Rachael was heavily involved in the actions taken by East Gippsland Water to protect public health during and after the East Gippsland Bushfires. And prior to this, her experience with bushfires stemmed from her training as a general firefighter for DELP at the start of her career. All right, take it away, Rachael.
Thanks for that, Jacob. Good evening, everyone. I'll be presenting to you today on what East Gippsland Water did to supply drinking water during the East Gippsland Bushfires. And before I do, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land of which I am, which is Bairnsdale, and that's the Gunai-Kurnai. And I would like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. Next slide, please. So a little bit about East Gippsland Water. We provide water and sewage services to the majority of East Gippsland. As you can see, we provide services to quite a big area, which ranges for about 21,000 kilometres squared from Lindenow South, as far east as Mallacoota, and as high as Dinner Plain. We're quite a small organisation compared to other water corporations, but we do provide to a large area, and we have only about over 25,000 customers to date. What I want you to note is this map before I go on to the next slide. Next slide. So before COVID-19, you might recall there were the East Gippsland Bushfires. And these actually started in November 2019 and progressively got worse over time into December and January. Over 1 million hectares of land was affected by this bushfire. And if you can recall the last slide that I showed you, our entire serviced area was actually affected by the bushfires. We have 9 water supply zones. All of them were impacted simultaneously because of the East Gippsland bushfires. The bushfires were also very intense. As you can see on the bottom left there, that's a picture taken on the evening of the 30th of December 2019 from Bairnsdale, the township of Bairnsdale, and it was like Armageddon in the background there with the red hues and the grey clouds, and that was only an intense bushfire is going to cause something like that to happen. The overall intensity of the bushfire across that whole area was actually ranked as most severe. As you can see, quite a large proportion of it was listed as red. So it was a very intense and extensive bushfire, which made it such an unprecedented event. Next slide, please. So in order to manage this incident, we set up an incident management team, which consisted of various departments like planning and operations and communications. And this allowed close liaison with the emergency services managing the East Gippsland bushfires at the time. It also allowed for a coordinated approach to how we would manage this incident, given that all 9 systems were affected at the time. Something of interest to note is that we actually had 31 staff involved in the emergency management team over a 36-period day. So it involved quite a lot of staff time to manage this incident. But what I wanted to talk to you about today is what we did on the ground to ensure supply of water to some of the townships that was most severely impacted. Next slide, please. So you might recall at the start of the year on the media, Mallacoota was very much under the impact of fire, with ember attacks threatening the entire township. There was actually 92 houses lost in that town at the time. And one of the biggest, I guess, one of the first challenges we had to face in Mallacoota was keeping up with the demand of water. So as you can imagine, we had our customers and the CFA and everyone madly trying to put out these fires with water, filling up buckets, emptying hoses, things like that. So one of the biggest decisions we had to make at the time was what was our service going to be for our customers during this bushfire event. On the one hand, it was to be supply of water. So in order to supply the water to Mallacoota and other townships that were under impact, we would have to change the operations of our water treatment plant, which would ultimately mean potentially supplying water to towns that did not meet Australian drinking water standards. On the other hand, were we to ensure the supply of safe drinking water, knowing that we would actually run out of water to keep up with that demand. We made the decision at the time to do everything that we could to ensure the supply of drinking water to our townships. And so for Mallacoota, this meant that we actually had to bypass secondary disinfection. As a result of this, we issued a boil water notice for Mallacoota, urging people to boil their water before they consumed it. And one of the biggest issues with this was how to communicate a boiled water notice to a township when you can't actually access the township. Mallacoota was completely under threat of fire. There was no ability to knock on doors, inform people, letter drop, that kind of thing. So we had to use other forms of communication for the boil water alert. And this meant things like utilising the VIC emergency app, ABC radio, SMS, and other forms of communication. Another challenge that we faced at Mallacoota was, as I mentioned, it was completely cut off. And as a result, we had 3 people working madly to support the community, provide the services and look after their friends and families. So fatigue management was a huge risk at the time. How are we going to get resources to help out these guys? So we actually had to utilise the Defence Force and other means to be able to transport in other resources to be able to help out our staff. And this also had to be applied to sample our system as well. So we have a drinking water quality sampling system, and we had to make sure that that was running whilst this whole event was happening. So we actually had to transport in samplers to the site, to the township as well. Whilst the water treatment plant was protected by a sprinkler system at the time, which allowed us to provide this service, we did face some challenges, and as you can see in the bottom left there, we did see some asset damage. This is the raw water basin shade cloth cover at Mallacoota, and as you can see, it was severely impacted by ember attack. This is something that we're still working through to fix at the moment. Next slide. Another township that we had to make adjustments to ensure demand was actually Omeo. So in the circumstance of Omeo, in order to keep up with demand for our customers, we actually had to bypass the whole water treatment plant, which meant that we had to provide raw water from one of our basins straight into town. Because of the risks associated with this, and also the fact that electricity actually had dropped out, we went for a do not drink option, do not drink notice for Omeo, because obviously you can't boil water if you don't have electricity. So this was done in close collaboration with Department of Health. And in order to lift this notice, we actually had to flush the system quite extensively and sample it quite extensively as well to ensure that we were happy and that we were very confident that the water was safe to drink. This took 11 days to lift. Buchan also had a similar issue, and we went through a similar process for Buchan. Final slide. So in very short story of what happened, we can proudly say that despite an unprecedented bushfire event with staff and homes properties under threat, East Gippsland Water was able to maintain sufficient supply of water to its customers. We took measures to protect public health and have since been providing safe drinking water to East Gippsland. So this, yeah, we've done a really good job, and it's all because of the staff work that's happened. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks heaps, Rachel. Got an absolutely massive effort from you guys in that response, and an 8-minute summary does absolutely not do it justice. Yeah, great job. I'll just put a reminder that if you've got a question, chuck it in the Q&A section and get them in early, because if someone else has the same question, they can upvote yours. Okay, our next speaker is Wayne Charlton. Wayne is currently the Security and Emergency Management Specialist for Melbourne Water. His role covers areas as diverse as emergency management training and response, physical security, incident reporting and trending, and business continuity management. Also noticed, Wayne, you started at Melbourne Water just before the Y2K bug hit. Any learnings from that?
That in fact we very much overestimated its impact.
Okay.
That was the key learning.
All right, I'll let you take it away now. If I can figure out how to get the slides going. There we go.
That's all right. Great. Yeah. Thanks, Jacob.
All right. See you again in 8 minutes.
Will do. Thanks, mate. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting tonight and pay my respects to elders past and present, and also any of the elders from other Aboriginal communities who may be here today with us as well. So Rachel spoke about the fires this year. I'm going to take you back 12 months to the fires that Melbourne Water faced around our catchment areas in 2019 and provide you just a very short update on the status of COVID-19 and our response to that. Next slide. Thanks, Jacob. And we can go on another one. Thanks, man. So if we go back to March of last year, we had a whole range of major fires burning through Victoria, and in about the 5th of March, there was around 44, 45 uncontained fires burning through the east of the state. A number of those fires were impacting on catchments for Melbourne Water, and particularly obviously to the east of Melbourne. Melbourne's water supply catchments are predominantly to the east of the city, and water transfers west into the town and into the city globally. Melbourne Water is a wholesaler, so we have a responsibility for the overarching catchments, reservoirs and major bulk distribution throughout Melbourne, to which we passed on water supply onto the 3 retail companies in Melbourne: South East Water, Yarra Valley Water and City West Water. Of these fires, there were 3 fires for us that were of significant concern. If you just want to advance slightly for a second, Jacob. And there were 3 major fires that we were certainly concerned about at the time. So one was at the Thomson Reservoir in West Gippsland, a second one in the Upper Yarra catchment, much closer to Melbourne, and then a third fire that was burning in the vicinity of Bunyip, just to the east of Melbourne. Thanks, Jacob. So to give you a little bit of an overview, on the Thomson fire. So the Thomson fire, like all good incidents, started on a Friday afternoon and also happened to be the Australia Day long weekend. That initially consisted of 2 or 3 smaller fires that were started by lightning and that joined together and spread over to the southeast over a number of weeks. The key issues that we were particularly concerned about in that space were potential turbidity and supply issues, given that the Thomson catchment and the Thomson Reservoir is one of the major reservoirs for supply of water to Melbourne. We were also then concerned about the potential of damage to infrastructure at a location known as Bell's Portal, which is essentially the offtake from the reservoir that then transfers in a tunnel all the way through to Upper Yarra Reservoir before transferring into Melbourne. So both the water quality aspects and some of the potential for physical damage of infrastructure was a concern for us. Thanks, Jacob. So a couple of photographs just showing you the extent of the fire. So the view from basically on the left-hand side from the Thomson Dam wall looking northwest during sort of the worst part of the fire, and you can see that it effectively reached the water line, and as was shown on the previous map. The photograph on the right is the Bell's Portal infrastructure. So you can see sort of at the end of the spur that comes down the middle of the photo, some small buildings and infrastructure located on the end of that spur next to the water line. That is the infrastructure that basically draws water from the reservoir and then starts the transfer process to Melbourne. So we were concerned about the potential for fire impact on that infrastructure. Next one, thanks, Jacob. Okay, there we go. So again, you'll see a bit of an emerging theme here. Again, the fire in the Upper Yarra catchment started on a Friday afternoon. And while we were still having the issues out at Thomson, this fire started up in parallel, again, a lightning strike. And what we were concerned about there was the potential for very significant fire spread into the Upper Yarra catchment. The fire essentially started outside the catchment, but then some of the fire behaviour modelling was showing very significant burn potential into the catchment. We were also looking at several small spot fires that were inside the catchment as well that had lit from this fire. And again, we were concerned about the potential for turbidity issues from this reservoir, given the proximity of the fire to the outlet. And you can sort of see on the map that's there, the fire shaded areas just to the north of the Upper Yarra Dam wall, which is effectively where the outlet is. And so there was quite a concern that should that fire reach the catchment and we had rainfall events or similar that would wash sediment into the reservoir, that's a major turbidity issue for us. The reality is that for Melbourne, a lot of our water is unfiltered. So people tend to think that the bulk of the water is filtered, and that isn't the case. We have filtration in some areas, but not in all. And so turbidity in the Upper Yarra system would be a very significant issue for us. And if we were to lose the Upper Yarra Reservoir, the connection, therefore, back to the Thomson Reservoir, much further east, is also lost. There's no ability to transfer water from the Thomson Reservoir to Melbourne other than through Upper Yarra Reservoir. Thanks, Jacob. And the last fire we had some concerns about was the fire in the Bunyip State Park. And it was basically not so much a catchment related issue, but it was more an infrastructure concern. So there was concern that fire could potentially spread to the townships of Bunyip and Garfield and Tynong. There's a number of water treatment plants, reservoirs, pump stations and infrastructure in there. Quite a number of waterways that Melbourne Water are responsible for. It's actually also one of our other responsibilities is waterways and creeks. And we were going to certainly see some significant impact on the waterways in that space. And we also had some initial concerns, potentially, that if this fire really took off and spread, that it was potentially going to move to the Tarago water treatment plant further east. That didn't eventuate. Fortunately, with the great work of firefighters on the ground, they were able to contain the fire before it spread to Tarago. Thanks, Jacob. What I really want to emphasise today, I suppose, in the 8 minutes we've got, is really about the fact that management arrangements when it comes to these events is really, really important to ensure that we're very clear about who has accountability for what and who's managing what in these circumstances. And it was really important that whilst Melbourne Water had an incident management team operating and running to manage these incidents, it's really important to understand and to make sure that incident team are focused on the fact that they're actually not the statutory firefighting authority. It's not their job to fight the fire. That's the responsibility of the statutory fire agencies in Victoria. And the real role of Melbourne Water is about managing water quality and quantity. And so our focus of our incident team really drove into planning and contingency work in relation to water quality and quantity from those, particularly the Upper Yarra and the Thompson reservoirs. And we allowed the management of the fires to occur through the various incident control centres that were in place for those fires. However, it's important in those cases to be deploying an EMLO or an emergency management liaison officer into those incident control centres to be able to share information backwards and forwards between the incident management team at Melbourne Water and then the incident teams looking after the fires. And that includes also putting in a liaison officer at the state level, at the state control centre, where the state's real focus is about managing state priority and consequence. So there was a lot of fires burning at that time, lots of requests for resources, aircraft, etc. And so our ability to input into the state's decision making, having them understand the importance of catchments and the fire impact on catchment is very, very significant. So it was able to significantly influence how resource was allocated, and particularly for the Upper Yarra fire that we mentioned, we gained significant aircraft and significant on-ground resource to actually prevent the fire basically moving into the catchment. In the end, we only lost just over 1% of the catchment due to the great work that those teams did on the ground. So I think from dealing with a disaster perspective, it's really important about understanding the role of water agencies and our function in that space, that we might like to be trying to control the fire and manage it, but it's not our responsibility. We have to have a focus on water quality and quantity. Next slide, thanks, Jacob. And I'll try to wrap up as I've got one or two to go. Other thing too is about movement into recovery, and I'm not going to go through all the details of the streams, but the important part for us is about having a clear recovery plan with clear recovery activities and streams of work that we specifically managed to deal with the outcomes. For us, it was about water contingency, quality and quantity, about catchment and debris flow management, the works in the bunyip space to deal with the waterway condition and the fencing and things that were damaged, and also about continuing on with strategic communications as well. Thanks, Jacob. We'll just flip to the single COVID slide, which will wrap up my presentation.
Yep. Is this the one?
No, should be one more, mate.
Okay.
Don't know what's happened there. There we go, that's the one. So just to give you an overview where we're at currently, so we've had an incident management team running since March. We've moved about 800 to 900 people to work from home arrangements across the business. From a business impact perspective, we've had no disruption to our core services. We've maintained water and sewerage and our flooded and drainage response capabilities without any impact. We've had some minor impact for stakeholders. We've had to close our reception areas. We've cancelled school tours that we often do through our treatment plants and those sorts of things. Reality for us is closing of schools probably had a significant impact on some of our staff, more so than actual COVID itself. We have no positive cases in the business from that perspective, and really managing team connection, wellbeing and safety has been a really important focus as well for those working at home. As I said, we have no positive cases, and the current status at the moment is that we're transitioning from an incident management team into a new BAU recovery model, and that's going to identify what opportunities in particular that we might want to take from the work that we've done today about working from home, and see what we want to keep in the return to normal. So it's not always bad news in terms of disaster. Sometimes there are some benefits and some learnings you can take away. Jacob, I think in the interest of time, that's me done.
Thanks, Wayne. I think a big takeaway from that is, of course, you should always expect an incident on a Friday arvo.
Yes, and that's exactly the trend. Friday afternoon and on a long weekend. I think we'll come to the questions at the end, was I think the intent. So
Yeah. Okay, next up we've got Damian Wells, the MD from Coliban Water. Damian has studies work in the water industry in technical and operational roles in water, environment and regulation before moving on into an operations manager role, and then eventually onto CEO of North Central Catchment Management Authority, and then moving into executive director roles at the EPA, and now as the MD of Coliban Water. So a fair spread from operational, you've gone into regulatory there, Damian. Very interesting career trajectory. Now you're going to run through your response to the COVID situation.
Yeah, very good. Thanks very much, Jacob. And thanks, Rachel and Wayne and Rod, for joining in the webinar as well. Yes, some real passion coming through. I'd also like to kick off by acknowledging that I'm on Jara country, the land of the Shajawarang, and like to pay my respects to elders past and present. Yeah, you mentioned a little bit about history, Jacob. In my time at GMW, that was all about drought. In my time at CMA, it was a bit about drought, but mostly about floods and then recovery. And my time at EPA seemed to be a lot about factory fires and pollution and all kinds of stuff I didn't know about before. But what I'm going to cover, and it might be worthwhile, Jacob, if you just cycle through those first couple as I'm just giving this intro. That's Carisbrook that was flooded in 2011. And just to give you a sense of what I'm going to cover today, it's a bit about general stuff around intel and emergency management, thinking through the response. And Wayne really captured in that last bit about those management structures. So I'll move into the presentation proper. So really this idea about, this is sort of, some experience over time and some things I think are valuable, certainly things that help guide me in my management and leadership role. So this idea about intel and readiness, developing a culture where you are ready, where you've got your ear to the ground, where you've got a business that has hard wiring of processes across the board, taking a broad view of your operating environment and encouraging really good situational awareness in all of your team, all of our people, thinking about what is the context in which we're operating and what are the things that may impact on our ability to achieve our objectives. And you really, I think in the modern day, you have to take a broad view because you can be interrupted by things that you may not always expect. No secrets here. You need great structures, you need great processes, you need really well-trained people. You need to exercise in peacetime in order to be good when the balloon goes up. So one of the things that I've certainly learned by getting a few scars over the years is that move quickly, go hard, go early, follow your gut, make a judgment, back yourself in and allocate a team and stand up teams and mobilise. As you're doing that, put great people on it. That's what we've done with our COVID-19 response. And I think Phil Fasham, our incident manager, is on the call, as is David Sheen and others who've been involved in our response. Put great people on those teams, but also don't forget that you could get bitten by something on the BAU. So make sure you've got great people looking after the BAU as well. Make sure, exactly as Wayne said, stay connected into those state structures. That's ultimately where the incident gets managed from. You'll see the Emergency Management Commissioner, the Minister responsible, all of the control agencies play their role. If you're not connected into that, you have got no chance. You'll get overrun, you won't get resources, you'll get the incident taken off you. So getting connected in early is really important. Make sure you're connected locally. That's absolutely critical. Make sure you're joined up locally, sharing resources, thinking through the problem. And also don't forget about communicating internally so that people not directly involved in the incident understand that there's an incident running. They may not get what they need on the BAU because other things are being prioritised. It's efficient if you communicate well, communicate early so that people can just calm themselves down about what's an issue for them and maybe take the view about what they need to do to help the incident, and sometimes that is just keeping the BAU going. Next one, please, Jacob. This idea about speaking in plain language, sometimes when we spend a lot of time in bureaucracy, we use all these weird and wonderful words, half of which I'm sure most of us don't even understand. I think you've really got to focus on what might be the consequences that express for the community. How might the community experience the particular event? And so you will have heard the emergency management commissioners over the years. Craig Lapsley was super strong on this, and it's continuing now, all about consequence management. What can you do to work the problem, to understand how this will be felt by the community, and how can you, yes, address the root cause, put the fire out, stop the incident, all those things, but also think about how the community will experience, whether it's air emissions, whether it's pollution, whether it's lack of interrupted water supply, whatever it might be. Embrace the nature of incidents. They're dynamic, they change, and you just got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and running by the seat of your pants sometimes, and that's okay. It's okay to feel like that. Just keep working the problem, keep thinking it through, get great minds around it. On your comms, tell people what you know, tell them what you don't know, tell them what you're currently doing, and tell them what you're planning to do and by when, and tell them that this thing's going to keep evolving, it'll keep changing, and we'll keep communicating, and get them warmed up to the idea that this will change. I think you see our Emergency Management Commissioner do it well. You see our Premier has been doing an outstanding job, as has our Chief Health Officer with COVID-19, just bringing the community along on the conversation about dynamic situation. Don't get sucked into apportioning blame. You're going to waste a heap of energy, and it's going to distract everyone from the core job, which is navigating the current situation. Next one, please, Jacob. This engage, communicate, just keep engaging, keep communicating is the message here. Think about, of course, you've got to get your hard lines of communication right. You've got to get your briefings in through your formal structures, up through your incident team, your MD, might be into through DELP, could be to the Minister's office, could be through the State Control Centre and your MLOs. All that stuff, of course, has to be in place. Get that stuff right, get it done well, get ahead of it. Don't wait till you've got the perfect briefing. Go early, go hard. Soft communication skills, informal hierarchies. This is actually where a lot of us come unstuck. We neglect to be cognizant of these informal hierarchies. Community influencers, who are they? Are you connected in with them? Are you getting intel from them about the consequence that's being felt by a community? Who are other key powerful stakeholders? Could be NGOs, could be retired scientist who's got a big platform on Twitter, whatever it might be. Just think through who those people are, how you connect in with them, get them involved. Be sincere and be authentic around, we don't always know best. Sometimes we think we might, but you've got to be open to the idea that others out there have great information, great intel and great ideas, and embrace that. Recognise that we in agencies may not always have all the answers. Also, by doing that engagement, you'll hear that come through on talkback radio and those sort of things. People feel that the agencies have a bit more credibility because they are listening, they are engaging. Get that recovery process, as Wayne mentioned, get that recovery process going super early. We've done that with our COVID-19 pretty much not too far along after we established our incident management team. We've got stuck right in with the recovery team as well. And it gives people a channel to learn from the incident. And as Wayne said, what can we take out of the current event? What can we learn from? Next slide, Bridget. Just moving into our COVID-19 response. What have we done? Well, we've been trying to live some of what we've been describing in these earlier slides. We watch the news, pay attention, see what's going on around the world, listen to the Chief Health Officer. Something that had a huge impact on me, there was a press conference held by the Premier and the Chief Health Officer and the Health Minister of Victoria early on, very early on, and they talked about not if we have to close schools and take dramatic steps to go into phases of lockdown. They talked about when Victoria would be doing it. That got my attention. The very next morning, we just coincidentally had a staff meeting. We actually talked about COVID-19 that whole staff meeting that this was coming. What were we going to do about it? The next day, that day we set up an incident management team. The next day we started banning non-essential travel in the business. So this is that go hard, go early, activate your structures and your resources. Focus on your people. Make sure your people have what they need to do their job. Like everybody else, we got people home very quickly, very early. A few bumps in the road on IT things and resources and screens and chairs and desks and all those practical things. Just keep working that through to support your people so they can be present and get back on the job. That was a big focus of ours that was run through our incident management team. Check in with people, see how they're going. That's been really important as well. On the external facing, we started running very early with messages around drinking water is safe. Just let the community know, chill out, it's okay, drinking water is safe, because we did see some panic buying of bottled water, which was just completely, obviously unnecessary. Final slide, thanks, Jacob. The couple of things I just also let people know, something else we did is very early that through that incident management structure, we set 3 key business priorities. These were whole of business priorities, and they were very simple. Run great water services for our community to support them in their time of need. We had to do our corporate plan, and we're actually reinventing our corporate planning process at the time. And we're also running a new implementation of a new CRM, new billing system and customer relationship management system. So we set those, they're the 3 priorities. That's where we're going to put our resources. That's what we did. We hooked into a bunch of different global sources of information. We also realised, yes, it's a health emergency. It's also an economic emergency. We took our lead from the Treasurer and the Premier saying we need to support our communities, and we got all of our invoices in the system paid within a couple of days. And we actually paid out something like $1.5 million, which is a pretty big deal for a regional water corp. We did that within a day or two, which was important for our economy locally. In terms of internal engagement, we've got daily. We've just started to wind this back a bit, as Wayne alluded to. We've had daily incident management teams. We've had daily exec team meetings. We've had daily all-staff emails, daily check-ins with managers and their teams. We're doing those wellbeing pulse checks. We've had weekly board briefings with basically a COVID-19 dashboard, which gave a full view of the business, green, amber, red, how we're trending on all the key aspects of the business. And we just kept a relentless mantra on our 3 key priorities. And this has all been done by just empowering a bunch of great people through our structures to get on with the job and to make it all happen. So something else we came across was all staff broadcasts that we do through Yammer. We do those every Wednesday morning where myself and other people, Phil, the incident manager, and others are talking to our entire workforce in real time, which is just like this format we're doing now. So I'll stop there, Jacob, but yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks, Damian. Sounds like you were no stranger to disaster before we got into this, and you had your finger on the pulse from the start. Well done. All right, next up is Rod Curtis, the Manager of Water Systems and Solutions at Western Water. Lucky enough to work with Rod, and I've seen his response to this so far. He's managed to keep most of his sanity. So I'm really looking forward to his presentation here. Take away, Rod.
Thanks, Jacob, and thanks to the other presenters. Been great topics covered so far, and particularly Wayne and Damian very to the point around good incident management. So I'll probably reflect on some of the things you've already said. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Wurrajong people of the Kulin Nation. We're on the land here in Sunbury, where I am, and pay my respects to the elders, past and present. Just on the first slide, please, Jacob. So just a quick snapshot of Western Water, who we are. We're one of the 13 regional water corps, a very growing, vastly, rapidly service areas going very fast. We're quickly becoming some of the major suburbs of Melbourne, some of the challenges that we're facing there. Move on to the next one. Yeah, thanks, Jacob. So our pandemic action plan. So where this all started. Way back in the second week of February, our risk manager, Adam Kazi, called me and said, Rod, we need to plan for this. And my first response was, okay, really? We're really going to get involved in this and go hard. What did I know about coronavirus? I'm no expert. I can recall back in 2010 or somewhere around there, I think we had some H1N1 virus that we started doing some preparation work and some planning. Obviously, that never come to Australia. So that was about the closest that I'd got to dealing with a pandemic in a water business. But nevertheless, we kicked off and we started looking at some of the first high-level principles and started looking at critical chemicals, spare parts, PPE, and some of the consumables. We had a very clear objective in our pandemic plan. It was to plan for it, undertake preparedness activities to reduce the impact, take actions to contain the disease and continue to deliver safe services to the community, and also facilitate accurate, timely and helpful communication to our staff at Western Water. So we kicked off with our first incident management team on the 28th of February, and that does seem like a lifetime ago. So we stood up our IMT and we started planning for that. I was lucky enough to squeeze in a week's annual leave and got out of the country. And then on the 16th of March, when the first lockdown for international arrivals occurred, I was somewhere over Western Australia at midnight when that occurred. So I got wrapped up into that and was in ISO for 2 weeks, starting from the 16th of March. I was in contact with Adam a few times for saying I could probably squeeze back into the country earlier and get into Perth and beat the curfew. And he said to me, don't worry, Rod, you'll be working from home within a week anyway. So from there, it just ramped up. And there's so much had changed in that week that I was away. The structure that Western Water has put in place to manage the pandemic is we had moved from an incident management team to our pandemic committee, and it just changed some of the structures slightly. We were updating all our business continuity plans, and one of our biggest risks early on was our operation platform, our staff. It's the physical things that we can't avoid. We can work from home, and we've managed to do that very effectively, but you can't actually run a treatment plant virtually. You have to go to site. So we set up a system where all the operators were running around in isolation. We had to get some additional vehicles to run a complete isolated fleet. And before we even started moving people out of the office, we had every operator and every field service crew running pretty well as a solo person. And that produced some challenges, but also some opportunities that we're looking to capture and keep in the business. One of the interesting things I've seen when it actually goes really bad, there was an article I seen from America where a very large water business had hired a fleet of Winnebagos and had operators sleeping and living in their Winnebago for 12-day straight shifts. So luckily we never got to that, but it's pretty dire when you are starting to keep your staff at work for 12 days straight. So the targeted action stage, there was a lot of heavy lifting in that, long days. It was having 2 weekly sessions with the board. Numerous DELP reports were being sent in. The speed and the pace of this didn't allow us to get it perfect, but the acceptance of staff was amazing. And just reiterating what Damian was saying around go fast, go early and go hard, there's a great YouTube video that if anyone wants to watch from Dr. Michael Tynan from the WHO. And one of the quotes that come out of it, if you need to be right before you move, you'll never win. Perfection is the enemy of good in every emergency management. Speed trumps perfection. And that really resonated with me at the pace we're doing things. You just have to go hard and fast. And another good example that I've seen in this, we had a good briefing from one of our local CFA captains and said, hey, incident management is managing the grey. It's not suited to everyone, but you have to be able to actually pick up enough detail and make the right call. And sometimes you've got to accept that you might not have made the best call. So that was one of the key things that we were doing. So we went from 0 to 50% to 90% staff off-site out of the main office within 2 weeks. Amazing effort from our IT department, to actually facilitate that, get that going. So it was just a phenomenal effort from a great team in the pandemic committee and across the business to do that. Next slide, please. So the implementation stage. So we had to actually get in there and actually do it. So one of the things that was clear planning. It was great that we actually had a lot of work already done. We had a clear plan. We understood the objectives of what we had to do. We built a strong team. Some great relationships were developed in that. One of my privileges I've seen and what I've been able to do is I've worked with many people across Western Water that I would normally not get to work with. So that's been one of the great things I'll take out of this. Communication, it's key. It's got to be targeted. It's got to be directed at different times to different audiences. We did all staff catch-ups, which is something that Western Water's not done in a virtual space. And it's been a great take-up. We've had over 120 staff with the MD in 3 separate events. When we're doing the heavy lifting as a pandemic committee, we didn't have much time to actually start to look at the strategic space and develop some of the business continuities more in the 2-month, 3-month, 6-month space. So we developed a strategic task force to look directly at that, and that actually took some weight off the pandemic committee to deal with the here and now, which is more of an IMT structure and I suppose a crisis management team that you would put in place under the AIM structure. So we're kind of following a similar structure there. So all this is now underpinned by what we're developing is our COVID safe plan. So this is the plan that we're developing to actually bring people in so that we can actually get back into the office and start working on the transition and the things we want to keep. It's based on clear principles and it's got triggers that can be brought in and out based on government direction. Next slide, please, Jacob. So the journey, so where we're at the moment. So we got through the heavy lifting. We implemented some innovation along the way. One of the cool things we managed to do is when some of the PPE was starting to get a little bit hard to get, hand sanitizers and cleaning, we actually kicked our lab into gear, and we actually were able to actually do that. So get some hand sanitizers, disinfection, bottle it up, make our own labels, and start to distribute that to the staff where they needed it. So just a little innovative space there that we come across. So working from home, I think it was all a little bit new and a little bit different, and I would say we're in the honeymoon period. It kind of come easy to a lot of people. And then we sort of moved into the grind. So working from home, I suppose a bit of Groundhog Day. Obviously when the homeschooling kicked in, that was a real challenge for some staff, and the wellbeing really had to ramp up to match and provide support to the staff there. So now I think we're now moving into the BAU. I think we're sort of probably in that between the grind and the BAU at this point in time. Next one, please. Thanks. This is kind of a really different recovery than most incidents. Most incidents you can probably say, yes, the fire is out. We're now into recovery. The recovery on this one is going to be long and drawn out. We know that we're in for many months of this to come. But it's more around the transition and what do we want to retain. So what we've learned about ourselves, what we've been able to do, and the things we want to retain. Just the fact to get so many staff off site in such a speed with no real change management plan. And I think it's the acceptance of people just to do it. And maybe it's a bit because the incident or the emergency is at work, but it's also at home. So I think everyone was living and breathing it. So everyone just got on and rolled their sleeves up and did it. So there's obviously some risks coming forward. So obviously some IT challenges we've got coming to keep going in the pace we're going. Customer hardship will be a focus for most water businesses going forward. Capacity of some of our high key staff and the high demand that's on them. So we see that as a risk. Working from home, like we've all done our ergonomics and our risk assessments, but have we really set ourselves up to work long-term from home? And staff wellbeing, will be a key focus going forward as well. But some of the opportunities that we've actually looked to keep, we've moved our education program online. Our productivity's gone up with people not having to attend a depot or a base. They can go straight to work. We've done virtual tendering. Starting from home and working from home has enhanced just a more flexible work environment for people. We're all learning to communicate different. You know, I know it's a platform some of us have worked on, but we're actually getting better skills and management to actually do this in a virtual world. Teams are more resilient and better at time management than we probably were before. And one of the other things that we're looking at is possibly the retention of staff, or looking to employ staff that you may not have been able to attract because you could position the position a couple of days from home and a few days in the office. So obviously staff travelling long distances, you might be able to attract them. And that's particularly important for regional water authorities that sometimes do struggle to attract some people out of Melbourne. And another cool one we did was we set up drive-through vaccinations this year at one of our depots, so a lot of the staff didn't actually have to attend and get out of the car. So yeah, so lots of learnings and still a long way to go. Thanks, Jacob. You're on mute, mate.
Would not have been a Zoom webinar if I hadn't tried talking while on mute, would it? All right, we've got some questions in the question and answering section. Well done, Wayne and Damian, answering some digitally. We've got some directed to Rachel that we might put to you, Rachel. Angela Kelly asks, has customer trust in the water quality been affected due to the do not drink order? If so, what have you done to rebuild the trust?
A great question. We've actually found that because we communicated quite well throughout the event, we were very transparent about what was happening to the customers and what we were doing to supply water. We actually had, it didn't affect our relationship with customers at all. In fact, we had very good feedback from our customers. I think this comes obviously with good communication, but also the fact that we're embedded in the community and that we're a close-knit, small embedded community. So we were really happy with that outcome. We were worried at some point, were we building on to more stress to our customers for what they were already facing, but we actually had a great outcome as a result of it. And yeah, the community was fantastic. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Rachel. This one might be for both you and Wayne both. What contingency plans did you have for power failure? Wayne, do you want to start there?
Yeah, certainly can. So we've done quite a lot of work over a number of years in addressing potential for power failure, and a lot of that is really focused just around on installation of generators and automatic switchover on key treatment plants and sewage pump station facilities. Obviously, that is an issue that there's a flow-on dependence on diesel and liquid fuels, but for us, that has been a significant saving, and it's saved us in many occasions, and particularly over the last several summers where we're starting to see rolling power outages and load shedding becoming a particular issue. So, you know, we're not seeing necessarily the full widespread loss of power to Melbourne for days on end, but even rolling 2 or 3 hour outages just means that treatment plant keeps running. It means an operator doesn't have to go to site. They can actually see it running remotely on SCADA. It's been the key one that we've done for power supply. Yep.
Thanks, Wayne. Rachel, anything to add there?
Yeah, so we're quite similar in that matter. We do have generators for all of our water treatment plant sites and our key wastewater sites as well. And we make sure that they're tested regularly as well to make sure that they're working, and also to make sure that automatic switchover happens. On some of our sites, we actually do have solar panels with battery power as well, which also assists in that circumstance. So yeah, that's what our contingency plans are.
I saw Wayne's answered this one from a Melbourne water perspective, but Rachel, did you have any issues with blue-green algae?
No, not at this stage. We do. No, obviously we're seeing our water supply from rivers. We're not from a big reservoir, but we have seen an increase in algae in one of our raw water basins, but it hasn't been as a result of toxic blue-green algae. No.
Okay. Damian, you've answered a good one here. I might give Rod a chance at it. If never wasting a crisis is true, what are the opportunities you're seeing from COVID-19 that you want to drive in your business and perhaps for the industry? I'll let Damian and Rod both have a go at that one. Damian, do you want to?
Oh, yeah. Look, I'll put a couple of thoughts there. For me, look, the working from home thing, I think similar sentiment to Rod. I think there's some opportunity in that. We're talking about that with our people. We've done a survey of our people, 153 respondents. Probably 70 to 80% of people want to work from home 2 days or thereabouts, maybe a bit more. Whole bunch of things to work through. Logistics, who's paying for the screens here and at home? What about chairs, ergonomics? What about the team feel and the stuff you do in a connected way? How do you realise the business benefits? We think you've probably got to shrink your accommodation footprint to really realise the benefits, but then obviously you're into a denser working arrangements which may not support social distancing obligations. So lots of things there on that front. I think, yeah, as Rod said, the ability to maybe tap into some resources further afield than your local region in a more of a BAU sense. The other bit about, you know, for in our region, you know, we cover a fair bit of turf. So, you know, from the southern group of customers in, say, Trentham up to Echuca, you know, it's the best part of 3 hours drive. So we're very Bendigo-centric in our workforce. Could we have a better sort of local presence by supporting, you know, a workforce which, you know, has people living in Echuca and Rochester and elsewhere, which we don't have a heap of at the moment. I think IT capability really, really underscores just how important having great IT capability is. And I think we probably need to have a look at, we've done amazing work. Our team's been incredible. We're also managing that big IT project rollout. But I think when you take into account all of your, you know, at the end of the day, people and information is just all about how you run a water corp. So I think there's stuff in that IT capability side for us, which we need to have a look at too.
Rod, something from you?
I think if you went to any people and culture conference or seminar over the last, you know, half a decade, there'd all be this talk around working from home and it's coming, and this is where we need to move to. Well, we've got it, it's here. So I think it's around the takeout of the elements that we want to keep and also acknowledging that it's not for everyone. So some people do want to come to work. So whilst everyone gets a bit excited and sort of saying this is the new BAU, just also acknowledging that some people, it's not for them as well. But yeah, look, you know, I think businesses are ones that do this for a long time. We're actually thrust into this because of a need to do it. So it's around embracing the elements that we want to retain.
Great, thanks. I've got another great question here from Katrina Hall. I might expand on it a little bit though. She asked, did firefighters use significant volumes of water from Gippsland Water? How did you manage allocation? I might expand that by asking, what other impacts was there on the network due to the big take of water from firefighting efforts?
Is that directed at myself or?
You answered first, so you're in.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah, so I guess the answer was, how did we manage that? At one of our sites at Buchan, we did notice that there was extensive drawdown in the system, which was compromising our ability to keep up. So we actually had to communicate directly with that particular site and the CFA that was drawing there, just to let them know what was happening and just to control that a bit further and not to draw too quickly out of the system.
Wayne, you got a comment on that topic?
Look, from a Melbourne perspective, the impact is probably minimal because we're dealing with such large infrastructure and such large transfer volumes for us. The impact of that is really felt by the retail companies and the smaller regionals who are dealing with smaller infrastructure, you know, into the 150 mil, 300 mil type mains. Our infrastructure is, you know, generally 600 mil mains and greater. So supply is not so much of the issue. We certainly have more concerns about, particularly for our reservoirs, about aircraft using them and for aerial bombing. And in fact, one in the fires that I was talking about actually last year, the dam that the Ericsson Sky Crane actually fell into basically and had an accident is actually inside our Upper Yarra catchment. So, sorry, is inside our one of our catchments. So fortunately for us, we're able to isolate that little dam, that little component of the catchment very, very quickly. But that's actually our bigger concern, is not so much the quantity of water, but how aircraft are operating around our reservoirs.
All right, I might have to draw a line under the questions there so we can all get to our dinners while they're still hot. But massive thanks to our panelists tonight. It's really, I mean, I get a lot out of looking at how badly disasters can go and getting confidence that we've managed them well before. So I think that helps put people's mind at ease. I'm going to go over to Sam Skinner now, who will tell us a little bit about the Bushfire Hackathon he's been working on. Sam, you there?
Yeah, thanks, Jacob, and thanks to all the speakers tonight. It's been great of you to share your stories and experiences. And I realise we've just ticked over 7 o'clock, so everyone on the line, feel free to drop off. We are just going to be doing a little bit of a poll in the lead up to the Bushfire Hackathon series. Tonight's session has been a really key lead into the Bushfire Recovery Hackathon, where, much like tonight, we're presenting a unified response in the face of two really significant crises. The bushfires have been had such a huge impact on the whole country, and with COVID-19 coming along, it's put a little bit of a change in focus from where the bushfires, the recovery effort was really gaining some momentum. So we're hoping to channel a lot of the goodwill that was out there around responding to the bushfires and helping with the recovery effort, and channel that into an event, an extended series of online events where teams will get a chance to form and tackle 5 particular challenges. So there'll be 5 separate streams. You get to choose your particular challenge, and I'll just open it up to everyone to be able to vote. So we've currently got 8 challenge statements that we're needing your help to refine down to 5. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to have a read through the challenge statements that were developed in conjunction and close liaisons with our challenge partners, such as DELT, water authorities, catchment management authorities, so that we can develop practical solutions that are actually able to be implemented. And as you can see from the first question, also been liaising with Aboriginal corporations to develop that first question. So it looks like we're getting a few responses. I'll keep it open for a couple of minutes. And whilst you're doing that, we've, in terms of the structure of the series itself, which would really encourage everyone who's on the line tonight to join in on the hackathon. There'll be a kick-off event on the 17th of June, which will feature some pictures from the challenge partners, presentations from subject matter experts on the bushfires and the response and recovery efforts. And it'll be a chance to organise the teams and then define what the challenge statements are and empathise with the challenge partners who are tackling those particular problems. There'll be a couple of chances to check in and develop up the solutions with a final conclusion on the 20th of August to pitch the solutions, and there'll be judging of the best solutions, and then looking forward to actually be able to implement those with our challenge partners. So it looks like we've had a really good response. I'll leave it open for another 20 seconds for the last few people to decide, and then be able to share the results with you all. Final call. And I'm going to call it right there. So I'll share the results with you all. So we can see that how might we better mitigate impacts on fire-affected catchments related to water supplies for drinking, domestic and stock use and environment. That came up with the most popular option. Another catchment-related question, more environmental focused on promoting biodiversity, water quality and resilience. And then our traditional owner values being included in the recovery process. So it's good to get really interesting to see a pretty strong spread across the board. So thank you very much for your assistance there. That was really useful. We've got some really good subject matter experts to cover off on each of those questions. So your input's much appreciated. We hope you learned a little bit tonight about the water industry's responses to the challenges that are being faced from previous disasters and how to be more prepared for future disasters. I'll hand back to Jacob now. But I encourage you to have a look on the AWA website for the hackathon series. There's a flyer up there which explains in a little bit more detail what it's all about and how you can register. So thanks again to everyone who's tuned in tonight. Back to you, Jacob.
Okay, we'll just wrap it up. Another massive thanks to everyone who tuned in, and thanks to Rachael, Wayne, Damian and Rod for taking time out to join us here, and a really big thanks to Sam and Digna for getting it all organised and letting me rabbit on in between our speakers. So thanks a lot, everyone. I'm sure those at home are giving a big round of applause. We'll wrap it up. Everyone enjoy your night, and yeah, keep an eye on the AWA website for upcoming events.
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks all.